Hello everyone, my name is Michael Green and I am here to present game mechanic alignment theory and discovery. I want to thank my co-authors, Drs. Ahmed Khalifa, Philip Bontrigger, Rodrigo Canan, and Julian Tegelius for their help in creating this. The concept of game mechanic alignment theory is relatively simple, and before we jump into it, I'd like to give some context, specifically that in automated tutorial generation. I've been working as a PhD student at New York University for a few years now, and I've written quite a few papers on the topic of automated tutorial generation. Um, and while I'm doing all this research, I often have to ask myself the question, what is a tutorial? The thing about the term tutorial is that so far, just like a lot of other terms in video game literature, nobody's come up with a widely accepted official definition of what a tutorial is. So I've had to come up with one for my research. Those papers that I just threw up there, I've been answering the question by saying that a tutorial is an artifact of game design that explains to a player how to win and how to lose the game. After a while, I begun to realize that this is a bit of a naive definition for what a tutorial should be. In fact, if we look at game design theory and literature, um, people don't play games just to win and lose. People play games mainly to have fun, right? To solve puzzles, to get challenged. It's not just about winning and losing. So take a game like Minecraft, for example, which is one of my favorites. It's based in this 3D voxel sandbox of a game, and you can build anything that you want in this game. It's crazy. You can destroy things, you can create farms, you can build enormous skyscrapers, collect resources. There is an end, a way to beat the game of Minecraft. To do that, you need to go to this place called the End, literally, and defeat an entity called the Ender Dragon. It's a bit on the nose. And when you've defeated this Ender Dragon, you're taken to a credit screen, and then you're taken back to the game after the credits roll, and you can do pretty much whatever you want again. In fact, sometimes you can go back and defeat the Ender Dragon again. Here's an example of a player who does not play Minecraft in the traditional go attack the Ender Dragon way. This player decided that they wanted to see just how many TNT blocks they could blow up inside the game and if that could possibly crash their Minecraft server. So he takes 1 million TNT blocks, as you can see here, uh, and decides to, oh, and if you give him more likes, he'll blow up 1 billion. And he decides to light them all off. So as you can see, there's different things that people will do in game depending on what they want to accomplish outside of just winning or losing. With that in mind, I don't think that the definition of a tutorial should be something that teaches a player how to win and how to lose, but more something that teaches a player to do the things that they want to do, including maybe winning and losing, which is where game mechanic alignment theory comes into play. Imagine the mechanical space of a game to be a two-dimensional plane. The x-axis of this plane defines the environmental influence. In this horizontal dimension, mechanics that are systemically rewarding, like earning points or higher agency or outright winning the game, are positive, while mechanics that are systemically penalizing, like losing points or lower agency or just losing the game, those will be negative. Since systemic values are built into the game itself, they remain the same regardless of who's playing it. The y-axis of this plane defines the player's influence, which is independent of the game itself. In other words, this is the space that is unique to every player because each player brings their own biases and intrinsic motivation into the game. And in this vertical dimension, mechanics that are positive are ones that the player, for whatever reason, which we can't really assume to know, wants to perform. Maybe because it furthers their own goals that they set out for themselves in the game completely independently of the environment. And the mechanics that are negative are the ones that the player wants to avoid. perhaps because it will fail to help them reach their goals. When you cross these two dimensions, you get four quadrants. In quadrant one, you'll get mechanics where the game is rewarding the player to perform and the player wants to perform anyway. In quadrant two, these are the mechanics that the game will punish the player for performing, but the player wants to do regardless. In quadrant three, the game will punish the player for performing these mechanics, and the player does not intrinsically want to perform them. And in quadrant four, the game will reward the player for performing these mechanics, but the player does not want to perform them anyway. This next part is where the term mechanic alignment comes from in the namesake. Mechanics that are in quadrant 1 and in 3 we consider to be in alignment because both the player and the environment are in agreement on something. It is important to note, though, that being in alignment is not a judgment of player ability, nor is it a statement on what is correct behavior in the game. I want to specify that I don't believe there's a wrong way to play a video game, and that's certainly not what we're suggesting here. It's simply a way to categorize mechanics relative to the systemic rewards of the game and how often the player is motivated to trigger them during play. The next obvious question is, what can game mechanic alignment theory be used for? And we think quite a few useful things. For instance, it can help differentiate players or playstyles and how they behave in the game. Or it could give critical analysis to game designers when they design levels or new mechanics. And last but not least, my favorite, it can help identify the mechanics that a player might care to know about inside of a tutorial. Let me show you an example. Let's take a boiled down version of the video game Super Mario Bros., like a well-known classic, right? And let's take the perspective of what I'm calling an explorer player. This player would be like what we would consider the average Super Mario Bros. Player to be, like someone who tries to beat all the levels, likes collecting coins, avoids losing lives, and they probably never really pass up a chance to pop a mystery block. In this example, an explorer would probably care a lot about touching the flag at the end of the level, because in Super Mario Bros., as you know, that lets you win when you touch the flag. And the game also strongly rewards the player for touching the flag, since that's what lets you win, right? Therefore, touch flag would be somewhere at the top right corner of the graph, firmly in quadrant 1. Let's look at another useful mechanic in Super Mario Bros., running. Running lets the player move faster, but with a little bit less control and reaction time. It's required for a few jumps in Mario levels, but not all the time. And an explorer will run when they need to, but probably not always, and the game will reward the player when they do so. We'd say quadrant 1, but not as high as touch flag. However, losing a life is bad for an explorer, right? They do not want to lose lives. And the game also penalizes the player when they lose a life. Like if they lose too many, they have to start the whole game over. Let's place that firmly in quadrant 3, bottom left corner. When the player touches an enemy, but they have previously eaten like a mushroom and grown into a large Mario, they won't lose a life. They'll just shrink back down into a wee little Mario. The explorer doesn't want to do that very often, but they might see a few scenarios where it's worth doing it, right? For some sort of reward or a box, or maybe they saw a cool power up to get. Or it's possible that they make a few mistakes and do it by accident. I mean, we're talking about a human player here who might make a few mistakes. Finally, an explorer is a playstyle that enjoys collecting coins. The game rewards the player with points after every coin that they collect in Super Mario Bros. And if they collect 100 coins, the game will give them another life. So now we have an idea of the mechanical alignment of an explorer playstyle in Super Mario Bros. But what happens when we compare the explorer to another playstyle? Let's compare our explorer to a speedrunner. To catch everyone up, speedrunners try to complete the level as fast as possible. It's an absolute race to the finish. Therefore, they care about mechanics a little bit differently than a more laid-back player like an explorer would. For example, both players want to win by touching the flag, and they don't want to lose lives about the same amount. But the speedrunner cares much more about running, and they might even see some more value in getting hit by enemies and shrinking down a size just to keep going forward as fast as they can. Speedrunners do not care about collecting coins as much as an explorer either. Now, what I just showed you was just a theoretical example. So you're probably wondering, how do you put real mechanics on the graph? To find the x value or the systemic value, you have to find a correlation between a specific mechanic and that mechanic being triggered when you win. And in order to find the y value or the agential value, you have to find the correlation between that mechanic being triggered and a playstyle person or agent triggering it. In order to find those correlations, you have to amass a distribution of play traces with different play styles or people or agents playing, and you want to track all the mechanics triggered that you care about looking at. We calculated our correlations by using the Wasserstein distance formula and the mechanical frequency during the play traces. To get the absolute x value, find the distance between the winning play traces versus all the play traces. To find the absolute y value, find the distance between a specific player's play traces versus all the play traces. You can get the correlation's direction by finding the difference between the averages of the distributions. The details are in the paper, and I don't want to bore you all with math. But long story short, you can find the Wasserstein distance and then multiply that by the correlation direction to get the complete x and y values. We tested this method on several games in the general video game artificial intelligence framework. Shown here is one such game called Zelda, which is a simple roguelike dungeon crawler. In Zelda, the player takes control of an agent who must collect a key to unlock a door and win the game. They may choose to swing their sword to slay monsters for points, but they need to be careful because the monsters can fight back. We use several agents in the GVGAI framework to play game levels for data. Two are shown here on the mechanical alignment graph for Zelda. Adrian CTX is a previous competition winner, and Greedy Search is a simple one-step look-ahead algorithm. It's obvious from the graph that while neither agent wants to lose very much, Adrian CTX is much more likely to collect the key and unlock the door, and therefore win the game. Meanwhile, Greedy Search mainly just battles monsters. There are some drawbacks to our method of estimation that we can observe, especially from the previous example in Zelda. One is that we used artificial agents with no explicit difference in reward, and by this I mean that Adrian CTX and Greedy Search didn't perform differently because they were motivated explicitly to do so in their reward function, but because one was just clearly better than the other. Adrian CTX can see multiple moves into the future, while Greedy Search can't. Consequently, differences of skill between different players, be they human or agent, can add a lot of noise to analysis because of spurious correlations, like did the player mean to perform that action, or was it just a mistake? Other things that can impact correlation values are the level layout and level difficulty. Some of this can be corrected for, usually by adding more data or by being more surgical about data collection. There's definitely a lot more to unpack here, so I recommend giving our discussion section a good read over. It's also my favorite part of the paper, just saying. We have some fun future work projects scoped out in this space. The first is replacing agents with real people. We'd like to analyze player behavior by clustering unknown players into known playstyles and see what happens. If you are interested in partaking in this user study, shoot me an email at mike.green@nyu.edu or go to study.mikecgreen.com. The first 100 participants of this user study will get a $10 gift card, so feel free to participate and let everyone you know. It should be a lot of fun. I firmly believe that a method such as this one could be used to inform future tutorial generative systems. Game mechanic alignment theory could allow tutorials to be more personalized than they've ever been before, and I'm really excited to see alternate methods to this too. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and are there any questions?